Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of RiverCity-Media. And first of all, it's a throwback because it's RC and D-Swane back together. Hey, buddy, what's going on?
Shoot, man, just ready to talk sports.
Man, it's been a minute for all of you that know. I'm guaranteeing our boy Ricky Gilly's going to be on here in a minute commenting. D-Swane and I did a show together for years and enjoyed our time, man. I miss getting to see you guys every week.
I do too. My only drawback to doing this is the eye candy's not going to be seen tonight.
Oh no, no eye candy tonight. You're going to have to depend on your intelligence, D-Swane.
That's a scary, scary proposition right there.
Hey, but there is a nice little smiling eye candy picture up on the website with you. I stole from your Facebook today. So,
well, as long as you got my good side, I guess I can't be too mad.
Do you have a good bad side, D-Swane?
That's a great point.
Hey, real quick before we get into football, what's happening on the Masters? Bring us up to date.
These three guys shot 7 under today. Victor Hovland, Brooks Koepka, and John Rahm. John Rahm started the day on number 1 with a 4-putt for double bogey and still went out and he shot 9 under the last 17 holes.
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty strong. Nicholson is under par. Spieth, Thomas, Rory, they're all one or two under. A lot of big names way up the board. It's going to be a fun weekend, man. I am excited about the Masters weekend.
Let me guess. Saturday and Sunday, D-Swane's TV's on CBS all weekend.
The whole time, absolutely.
All right, sounds good, man.
Oh, and Tigers +2 for all those fans of Tiger, which I'm not.
Yeah. Is he going to make the cut?
I haven't seen what they've got the cut set at yet. And, I mean, it can change throughout the day tomorrow depending on wind and all that. But if he has another day like he did today, no. And, I'll say this for the guy. I'm not a fan, but he's basically walking around on a bionic leg. And for anybody that's never been to Augusta, the TV does it zero justice.
Right.
It's the only go up the mountain to Macklemore. You want to get an idea of what walking Augusta is like, it would be like walking that. There's a lot of ups and downs. And, today he was fresh. Tomorrow is going to be a different animal for him. He's played one tournament since, I think, the British Open last year. I know he gets out and plays golf, but let's be honest, you're playing golf and walking around Florida, it's awful flat.
Yeah.
Unless he hops back on the pills that he's so famous for, he's going to be hurting tomorrow after making the loop today.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be a rough grind on him tomorrow, and especially gets into that weekend.
Yeah. And, last year he went out and played well the first day, not bad the second day, but he got into the weekend and you can just tell he was running out of gas. I want to say he shot 4 or 5 over on Saturday, pretty much played himself out of it. But, it's a grind. I can remember my first time ever going was in 2000. I was 30 years old, in pretty good shape. I walked the course probably twice throughout the course of the day. But the next day, I felt it. So I can't imagine what a 48-year-old man that's walking on titanium feels like.
Mm-mm. No, I'm with you. And he, you know what? He still brings a lot of eyes when he makes it. Last year, everybody got excited after day 2.
Oh, but yeah, absolutely. And, as far as the game of golf goes, again, it's just my opinion. I know there's some people out there like me that don't ever want Tiger to make the cut. But as far as golf itself, it definitely brings more eyes to the TV and to Augusta when he's in contention.
Absolutely. Well, we were going to do this podcast. We can talk golf all night. I know it's one of your passions, but your other one, besides baseball, is SEC football. So we were going to talk about some of the people out there that's been talked about a lot. We're going to kind of breeze through some other people and really spend some time on those quarterbacks.
I'm ready.
All right, man. Well, let's start on the defensive side of the ball and just get through this. We kind of broke down position groups. There's 3 projected first-round players in the defensive backfield from the SEC. Brian Branch from Alabama, Kelee Ringo from Georgia, and Cam Smith from USC. I saw 2 of the 3 this year, D-Swane, and the one that jumps out to me was Brian Branch from Alabama. Do you have any preference to any of those 3 defensive backs?
Well, I think Ringo is way overrated. I understand he had the pick 6 in the title game last year. He got abused by Marvin Harrison Jr. And honestly, he didn't look good against Florida. And I won't say much about Richardson, but Richardson didn't look good a lot of games.
Mm-hmm.
Georgie looked pretty good, and he was picking on Ringo. I know that Florida's got Trey Dean. He's not a quarterback. He's a safety. He's being talked about late first round, early second round, just because of what he done in the combine. The combine is something else we're going to talk about when we start talking about the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But, I think Branch is going to be a solid player. And all you got to do is look at the DBs that Alabama put in the NFL recently. And I understand Patrick Surtain Jr. has the bloodline. His dad was an All-Pro. He's probably going to end up in the Hall of Fame if he's not already. I can't remember if he's there or not. Surtain Jr. is the last one out of the Alabama class that has already started shining. So, yeah, I'm with you there.
I just like the way Branch, first of all, he's physical as a safety and he tackles well. And you know, you got to remember those safeties back there, 210, 20 pounds, sometimes they're hitting tight ends at 255, 245. So, especially as
position as a whole, they've kind of become the freak athlete.
They have.
I know DK Metcalf is a receiver. He's a rarity at 6'4", whatever, 235. That dude's unbelievable. But yeah, you start going down the list and you look at these teams, especially the better teams outside of Cincinnati. They've all got a stud tight end.
Absolutely. And somebody like Kelsey may be the best pure open field receiver in the NFL.
Well, I'm going to put Jamar Chase over everybody, but Kelsey's definitely in the top 5.
Absolutely. And that's a 6'6", 260-pound guy.
Oh, yeah. And Georgia, and I think my hatred for Georgia is well known, but I so wish Brock Bauer could go ahead and head on to the NFL.
You and me both.
That dude, when he gets there, and I'm sure we're going to talk between now and when he goes out, by the grace of God, we'll have a few more conversations. That dude's going to make a lot of money in the NFL.
Absolutely. Absolutely, he is going to make a lot of money in the NFL. All right, let's jump up to. There's not really anybody I saw at linebacker, but they list Will Anderson as a linebacker edge rusher. But
yeah, he's an outside linebacker, edge rusher, whatever, hybrid.
He's going to play most of the time on third down with his hand in the dirt, though, D-Swane.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you think? All right.
Unless he ends up in a 3-4 scheme, yeah, I think he will.
Now, I'm going to say something. Will Anderson has countless many more sacks than anybody else in college football over the last 2 years. However, in Knoxville against Darnell Wright, who we'll talk about later on in this podcast from Tennessee, he kind of disappeared in that football game. And that was a game you could rush the passers up and down the field 52-49. And he's really feasted sometimes against weaker competition. But a big physical tackle, I don't know if he can handle that yet. I'm sure he will at the next level with a little more weight. But he disappears against that 6'6", 330-pound tackle at times.
What I noticed this year with Anderson, I didn't watch Alabama a ton, but I watched the bigger games. And you never want anybody to get this label, but we heard it with Clowney a little bit his last year there. I think the kids saw dollar signs and I took some plays off.
That wouldn't. That's not shocking. He there's certain positions that you just expect to pop every night, and I'm telling you, in Knoxville, he disappeared off the field, and that was a game you expect to rush in to jump off at. And that Clowney comparison's real accurate, I think, because he is that same kind of freak athlete. He may not be Clowney all the way. At 36 quarterback hurries, 9 hits and 14 sacks this year. That's big year for anybody.
That's a big year for anybody, but watching the games from last year and the prior year, like both Georgia games the year before, he was everywhere.
Yes.
It's like, and again, he knew he had to return back this year. It was almost like, all right, well, if somebody's going to challenge me, I'm really not going to put forth effort because I don't want to hurt myself.
All right. Now, that's one profile of a defensive lineman. Let's talk about the opposite, and that would be Jalen Carter from Georgia, who some people have said is the best overall player in this draft, but he also has a little bit of a legal problem hanging over his head. Was involved with the fatal tragic crash that happened at Georgia right after, I think it was the night after the national championship.
Yeah, it was the night of the celebration.
Yeah, great. I mean, last year, Georgia had 2 first-round picks, including the overall number 1. And even last year, I said Jalen Carter may be the best defensive lineman. What do you think of Jalen Carter, D-Swane?
Going back to last year, he was better than Jordan Davis. He just was.
Yeah.
Period. End of discussion. This year, for most of the year, he still fit the bill. They slacked out. He was not. You want to talk about non-existent? He was non-existent against Ohio State. You got to credit the offensive line of Ohio State, but when the time comes, there's certain players you expect to step up to be a difference maker, and he was not. Now, does that make me think any less of him? No. Every player that has ever played anything for any extended period of time has a bad night. But yeah, the legal thing, yeah, I get it. It may scare some teams off, but I think he's the best defensive lineman in the draft.
I think so too. I keep hearing this comparison to Aaron Donald at the same age, and I really have seen times that he's been that dominating on the football field.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, go ask the LSU quarterback how he felt about getting lifted with one arm by the dude.
No, I'm telling you. That was maybe his most impressive game. D-Swane, before we jump off, I want to talk about one good story, and it's from my Vols, of course. Byron Young, probably a second-day draft pick, was really don't know how to play football yet, just a pure athlete. Was working at a Dollar General store as a manager. Saw an ad for Georgia Military Junior College looking for football players. Goes and tries out. Ends up at the University of Tennessee. Ends up being a second team All SEC player. Projected to go, I've seen late first, but I really think he's going to go second, third round. That's still an incredible meteoric rise for somebody to go from a Dollar General store manager to an NFL player in 3.5, 4 years.
Well, anytime you hear stories like that, the first name you think of is Kurt Warner.
Absolutely.
Stocking groceries. Playing football, literally playing football on the weekend. I hope the best for the kid, and it's a great story. Honestly, I don't know a lot about him, mainly because the Tennessee games I watched, and I watched a handful, their defense was just so bad. It's hard to pick out someone, and especially when you're not really watching the defensive line.
Right. And plus, I think Tennessee's goal is, it's hard to, as a Tennessee fan, I told somebody the other day, you have to accept that we're going to be, next year, we can win the Natty next year and still be in the bottom 10 in defense. Because we're never going to be that elite Georgia defense because you don't have any time for possession. I think they were outpossessed by anybody, almost everybody last year.
Well, yeah, and their offense definitely is a detriment to their defense.
Absolutely. But it may have helped this kid play enough snaps to get some film on to get somewhere. And I'm with you. It's a great story. It's a story been talked about. And anytime you hear a story that you got to root for a kid like that. So,
Sure.
All right, we're going to go ahead and jump over 20 minutes in. We're going to get a couple of offensive players. And we've said we're going to save that last 30 minutes for those quarterbacks because I think we could spend 5 or 6 minutes on each one of them, not have a problem. I do want to start on the offensive line, and I'm going to start with the Gator.
My boy, Osiris,
I think if you're a team looking for a guard in the NFL, this is the number one choice. And I know most fans don't realize what the difference are, but this guy is a made guard. I want to read you something, D-Swane, and I know you know he's good, but I'm going to read these stats from you. 2019, as a freshman, he allowed 10 quarterback hurries, no quarterback hits, and not a single snap or single sack at left guard. As a sophomore, he played 11 games, 701 sacks, or 701 snaps, had just 2 quarterback hurries, no quarterback hits, and no sacks playing right guard. In 2021, as a junior, played 12 games, 807 snaps, had 4 hurries, 1 quarterback hit, and no sacks. If I read this correctly, this kid's never gave up a sack in his college career.
Well, one thing's going to change. At some point throughout his NFL career, he's going to give up a sack.
Absolutely.
But he's Zach Martin's predecessor. We all heard about Zach Martin coming out of Notre Dame.
Right.
Me being a Cowboys fan, the dude has lived up to everything that's ever been said or written about him. And I fully believe Torrence is going to be that same guy. And he's bigger than most guards, but his footwork, you think you could put him at left tackle with his footwork,
right?
And he'd be fine there. And as we all know, and the more we learn, read, footwork is the most important thing when it comes to blocking and being an offensive lineman in the NFL.
Yes, sir. And he has elite footwork.
He's going to be what, a mid first rounder?
Yeah. I was just trying to look at my mock draft here, and I've got several blocks pulled up. I've got one that shows him pick 24. I got one that shows him 16 to the Redskins. I've got one that shows him to the Bucks. Most of them in the 20s. I've got a couple of outliers that show him going in second round. Here's one. I really like this fit to the Philadelphia Eagles. And that Eagles offensive line is going to rebuild this year a little bit. And here's what they say about him, D-Swane, in this mock draft. Huge interior blocker, run greater when it comes to running, shocking and surprising athleticism when in pass blocking. You think that all that praise is fair?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Is he the best?
He's got that mean streak that you want.
That's where I was going, yeah.
He's the kind of guy that if there's somebody lined up across from him and he knows he's whipping, he's going back to the huddle and saying, run it up my butt.
And did that at times.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I thought he may have been the player of the game in that Florida State game 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago, where Florida just kind of run the ball down Florida State's throat. I really think if you need an interior offensive lineman, he is by far the best pick in the draft.
Certainly.
All right, let's a position that usually has some depth in the SEC, but there's just not a lot of receivers out there, D-Swane. There, Hyatt won the Blitnikoff. He's projected as a second-round pick. Tillman probably lost money at Tennessee by coming back and staying injured. What are the receivers that jumped off the page to you this year? Because outside of Hyatt, I don't know if anybody that I saw that was super impressive. Butte at LSU, but he was hurt.
Well, not only that, he basically quit against Florida State the first game of the year.
Yeah.
He's Odell Beckham without the catch.
Good point.
Porter from Florida has the size you want as for an outside receiver. He's 6'4", not a blazer, but fast enough, decent hands. He'll be a second or third round pick. The kid at Georgia, Mitchell, I don't know if he's coming back or if he's going. He just can't stay on the field. When he's on the field, he's legit. Like you said, Tillman's probably the best receiver. Shockingly enough, we're not talking about Alabama receivers for the first time in who knows how long.
Forever. Yeah, I like Tillman over Hyatt.
I do too, for several reasons.
Well, I think if Tillman stays healthy, you don't see Jalen Hyatt have the breakout year that you did.
No.
And Tillman, better route runner of the two. A lot of Jalen Hyatt's yards are straight down the field, over the top. And I don't know if you can live that way in the NFL. Unless you have Patrick Mahomes at quarter.
You can if you're a number two. Look at Alvin Harper.
That's true.
And Willie Gault. That was their job. Michael Irvin's the one that ran the routes, got the hard yardage, and then Aikman, Harper over the top.
Yep. Well, and I'll tell you something else that's shocking, D-Swane, to me. I don't even see a SEC running back except for Jamari Gibbs listed in the top 50 picks. Do you? I like Gibbs. He only played 3 years of football, 2 of those at Georgia Tech, 1 at Alabama. Do you have a running back that's out there somewhere in the SEC that you'd go, hey, I know this guy ain't got the press, but I might reach a little bit for him because he's really a player?
Well, no, Gibbs is, I mean, he was all Georgia Tech had, and then he comes to Alabama, and he shows he's versatile. He can catch the ball. He runs routes well as a running back. I hadn't seen him have to block a lot, but I do recall a few times him picking up a blitz, and he's not afraid to stick his nose in there. But no, I can't think of another running back that just made me think, all right, this guy's going to be a mid to late round pick that's going to be really good.
And the Georgia running backs are great, but they really don't project to the NFL. They're not. They're
not great. They're good in that system,
yeah,
and that's fine. And you know, I can't think of the one's name, but you know, I'd say there'll be a handful of running backs in the SEC make rosters and get paid.
I would think Chris Rodriguez at Kentucky,
yeah,
would be there. If anybody else, maybe Zach Evans at Ole Miss, but these ain't the Herschel Walkers and Bo Jacksons that we were all used to.
And Zach Evans, you know, I think we can all remember him coming out of high school. He was number one recruited running back and coming out of high school. And before he ever stepped on the field, he'd been in 4 different classrooms.
Yeah.
He committed to Georgia, decommitted, committed to LSU, decommitted, committed to Florida, decommitted, and ended up at Texas Christian.
And then finished up at Ole Miss, playing for Lane Kiffin.
And he's got some upside, but he's also a head case. A lot like Eric Gilbert. You know, all we heard was how great he scored off the charts. The dude can't get on the field.
That's you're right. Hey, before we jump to quarterbacks, I'm going to regress a little bit. There was one person I meant to ask you about, and you being a resident Gator, I thought the defensive tackle, the Dexter kid from Florida, was an awful impressive body. He's got the length. He was strong.
Gerard Senior.
Yeah. Is he?
He makes me scratch my head. And you want to talk about Florida? You know, Brendan Cox got kicked off the team, but he's another one. I'm not putting him in Will Anderson's category, but when he had his head on right and he got after it, he had closing speed on quarterbacks. Now, he could get after it, but another head case. Gerard, on the other end of the spectrum, obviously not gifted with all the talent that Cox has, just natural ability. But he plays hard. He's not as athletic as Jalen Carter.
Mm-hmm.
But they're going to know coming out of training camp exactly what they're going to get with that guy. He gives you everything he has, which is all you can ask for. They got him projected. I've seen a lot of second and third rounds. I don't think anybody's got him in the first, but I don't think anybody's got him in the fourth either.
When I sat down to make my Florida draft list, I wrote down Richardson and then Dexter, and I saw him for 2 of the last 4 years, and he definitely was the one person that jumped off the table. He's somebody I could see maybe being a second, third day pick that ends up being a 10-year, vet that maybe not that all pro type, but very serviceable and could jump off the table and take another leap.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying he can't turn into an all-pro, but I do think, and this goes with every player that we ever speak about, especially in football. If he stays healthy, I can see him playing 10, 12 years.
Yep. All right, D-Swane, let's get on to these quarterbacks. And this First, I got one question. I wrote this top of the page, big letters, to ask D-Swane. Is this the best group of quarterbacks in the SEC ever to come out together? Because I'm struggling to come up with a better one.
Out of the SEC?
Yes.
Maybe, but I mean, to me, there's one really solid one. There's one that I think is going to be good for a little while, but he's just too undersized. And then a bunch that you're flipping a coin on.
That's the next word I wrote down. Projections. You have to project. I think you have to project with Richardson. You have to project with Levis. You have to project what Hayden Hooker is going to be after the ACL surgery and paying outside of Heupel's offense. Bryce Young, we know what we've got. Now, I would assume he's the one you're talking about, undersized.
Yeah.
And Anthony Richardson, who's got every measurable you could have. Go ahead.
He's the guy you send off the bus first. Everywhere you go, you send him out in his T-shirt and shorts, and he just looks like the greatest thing that ever walked.
I'm going to give you my quarterback ratings as we go through this, but let's start at the bottom. And I think we have to start at the bottom, and he's my guy, but you got to put him at the bottom. One, he's 25 years old. Two, he's coming off of ACL. Three, he was highly productive, but he is a transfer, and to me that bothers me. We'll talk about that with him and Levis. It probably a late first rounder if he doesn't get hurt. But you have to accept that he is almost 26 years old by the draft day and an ACL D-Swane if you're going to draft Hayden Hooker in the second day.
Well, the really good quarterbacks have proven, 15 years ago, yes, his age would have been a concern. Now, these guys, with the rules in place, these guys are playing really, really well to near 40 years old.
Yeah, that's true.
You're still looking at 12 to 14 really good years because this year he's not playing.
No.
It's a red shirt year, and that's fine. So he gets under center at 26. Well, if he turns out to be as good as I think he's going to be, he can still be playing at 37, 38, and that's more than a decade. And any team in the NFL is going to take a quarterback. I know that my guy is going to start for the next 10 years. They're good. They're not worried about anything else. And to me, Hooker is the most polished NFL-ready quarterback coming out of the SEC this year.
Interesting. I'm a big Hooker fan. You know I am. Being a Tennessee grad, he had the heart issue at Virginia Tech. Now the knee issue. Is the health issues enough to move him down to the third round? I think somebody's going to come up and get him in the second round because if you can get lightning in the bottle, and he is a polished NFL quarterback, and you've got him on a rookie contract as a second round pick, you've got a lot of money to build around it.
Well, I saw something interesting, and this was by a former GM. Now, what goes through his mind, I don't know, but I saw that he had the Titans taking him in the first round. To me, the Titans would be ideal for him because you got Tannehill for at least another year. You can have Tannehill for a second year if you need it, if you don't think Hooker's quite ready. Now, if you're the Titans, do you want to waste a first-round pick on a guy that you know is not going to play this year? That's the big question. And that might be the big question for any team that's looking for a quarterback, which is why you have these teams trading up to get projections, projects.
I saw a projection that had it Hooker to Detroit, which made a lot of sense too, because you got Jared Goff there for another 2 years, and eventually lead over to Hooker. So I like your thought about the Tennessee Titans, but anybody, the Vikings with a short-term starter, anybody that's got a short-term starter, the Raiders with a short-term starter, That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yes. Hooker doesn't need to be drafted by the Texans or the Panthers. One, because it's a wasted pick for them because he's not playing this year.
No, and don't.
Those are the teams that need quarterbacks, which is why, the Bears traded back because they're still going to see what they got with Fields for at least 2 more years. And they got extra picks. And who was it? Carolina they traded with? Carolina needs a quarterback. We know
Desperately.
Are they going to go with Stroud or are they going to go with Young?
I think it's Stroud, but I don't know that. The one guy I listen to a lot is Chris Sims, and he kind of labors Stroud as the number 1 quarterback.
But gun to my head, I would take Stroud over Young for one simple fact. He's much bigger, and he's going to be able to take more of a beating than Bryce Young.
All right, D-Swane. I'm going to jump ahead to number 4 on my rankings. Let's see. I may not have him there, but to me, he's a bigger question mark than Anthony Richardson. I'm a Falcons fan. They got an 8th pick. I would be more disappointed to hear my team came out with Will Levis than I would any of these other guys. And I'll tell you why. You talked about the Tennessee horrible defense, and I'm a Tennessee. Thank God we won 11 games. Will Levis, first of all, Anthony Richardson, 400 yards against that defense. Bryce Young, 400 yards against that defense. Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson competing at the end of the game, trying to win the game for their team. Kentucky versus Tennessee in the same environment, 44-6, Will Levis with 98 yards. I don't know that he's the competitor that you want at quarterback.
Will Levis is another one like Richardson. Looks great in the T-shirt and shorts. And if all he had to do was drop back and never move, he throws the ball okay. We know that's not how it works in the NFL.
No, far from it.
When he's under pressure, he is dreadful. At least Richardson can tuck it and run it. And I'll say this about Tennessee, even though their defense was garbage. They did get after Richardson some, but it hurt them more than it helped them, shockingly enough. He threw the ball really well.
Yeah, he did.
Outside the pocket under pressure.
Yeah, he did. We made that point during the game.
Will Levis, to me, is I'm trying to think of someone, and I've tried to think of some. He is Ryan Leaf.
I wrote down all the intangibles, looks like a great quarterback, but so did Ryan Leaf and Jamarcus Russell.
There you go.
All right, let's move on. We got about 15 minutes, and I want to spend some extra time on this guy because you saw probably every game he played in college. I think, I rate Stroud. I'll be honest with you. We're not going to talk about Stroud, but I've got Stroud at number 1. But for the SEC purposes, I got Bryce Young number 1. But Stroud, after Levis, I rate Richardson as my best quarterback coming out of the SEC. And D-Swane, is the comparisons to Michael Vick fair, or to me, he's not Michael Vick. He is a drop back passer with some athletic ability.
Well, no, it's not fair because Vick was, especially in college, Vick was simply the best athlete on the field.
Yes.
Now, once he got in the NFL, especially after he got out of jail, he became a pocket passer.
True enough.
He made stuff happen in Atlanta solely on his really strong arm and his really quick legs. Richardson, and yes, I believe, practically every snap he took in college. You look at games like the Tennessee game or the Utah game, and you think, oh, my God, he finally got it. It finally clicked. And then you see a game like Kentucky.
Horrible.
And
he was horrible.
You think, how did this guy ever get a D1 scholarship? And I want him to succeed. The kid works hard. Everything I've read and heard about, I listen to Florida, Buddy Hill and guys like that talk. He works hard. I just don't know. And I think this is part of Levis's problem too, not just Richardson. I don't think they can compute quick enough. They don't have it upstairs. Bryce Young, for all his underwhelming arm strength, size, the dude sees the field really well, and he's got it upstairs. I don't think Richardson or Levis do. Now, that said, if Richardson were to go to the Titans or the Vikings, where a consummate pro that you can watch, you can listen to in the quarterback room, and you're not starting in front of for at least a year, maybe 2 years. If Richardson can go do that, then I think he could succeed.
So is he dependent on and I think this is a big part that's overlooked. He's got to land in the right spot with the right head coach early in his career.
100%. If he let's just say he ended up going number 1 overall, his career would be ruined draft night. Because Carolina doesn't have near enough of anything around him to make him successful.
That's true. And he's going to need support. I think something else that's important for Richardson is maybe to have a little better than average receivers when he gets that next level that can create space, because touch was never his thing in college. But now if we're talking about a rifle for the arm, I don't know if you saw the other day, he hit the top of the practice facility in his pro day.
Oh, yeah.
Arm strength is never going to be a problem.
Never. No, he's got – and the thing is, he started 12 college games.
Yeah. He only threw 36 passes or 38 passes is that's what his 38 the year before.
I thought it was a mistake for him to leave, but when you're hearing you're going first round, how do you tell a kid, look, come back, risk getting hurt, and if you have a second bad year, then it starts to look like, okay, well, maybe he's not as good as we thought. At least there's the projection and the hopefulness for him right now. But again, I don't care how much athletic ability he's got, because we know he's got a ton. If he goes and has to start from day one, that team is set back for at least 3 years. His career is all but doomed from the jump.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Because he struggled reading college defenses. How much more complex are NFL defenses?
To a level that most fans would not understand, including myself at times.
Absolutely.
All right, D-Swane. I want to jump over and then we'll come back and got 10 minutes. So let's spend a couple of minutes. And I'm going to say something about Bryce Young. In Knoxville, if anybody other than Bryce Young plays quarterback for Alabama that night, Tennessee beats them by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, that dude played great that night. He's played great in a lot of games.
Yeah, when I've seen him at his best, his sophomore year, he threw for almost 5,000 yards. Battled injuries a little bit last year. When I've seen him at his best, he's one of the best to ever play the game. But how does that translate to the NFL?
Well, I mean, you look at the NFL now. the way they move the quarterback around a little bit, especially guys that are undersized, Drew Brees, Kyler Murray, who I think's not good.
I wrote down Drew Brees. I'm glad you said that. That he's got to play like Drew Brees in a way.
He will be good for. I truly believe. I think he'll be a good, solid. Tua's another one. Even though Tua's a little taller than him, he's not a real big guy. They move him around. Tua has proven that he's more than capable to playing in the NFL. But I think Bryce Young is on that same trajectory as Tua. He'll play good for a little while, but the injuries are going to catch up with him sooner rather than later.
I agree 100%. Now, the one question that I'm having a hard time with is it's so important to be able to move up in the pocket in the NFL if you're built like Bryce Young, or I really think that Drew Brees is a very accurate comparison. Same kind of players, want to do the same thing. Bryce Young's obviously more athletic. How do you as a coach enable him maybe to be able to step up in the pocket? Is it scheme? Is it drafting shorter linemen? Or is it teaching him to throw from a higher stance? And I think Drew Brees threw off his tippy toes for about 10 years.
I think so. And I think it's going to be all of that. I think whatever team ends up drafting, whether it goes 1, 2, 3, 5, wherever, they're going to get a lot of tape of your smaller statured, shorter statured quarterbacks, Drew Brees being at the top of the list, to see, all right, let's look and see what this guy did to succeed in the NFL. And they're going to try to put a game plan together. If they're smart, and those guys are, they wouldn't be getting paid millions of dollars, even though 100 million people throughout the United States think that they can coach better than the 32 guys that are coaching.
Accurate.
I got to believe they're going to look at a lot of film and say, okay, what made Brees successful? What makes Kyler Murray successful? What made Russell Wilson successful? Because that's the guy we drafted.
Very good point. D-Swane, do you think his arm's good enough? Because he's not Richardson or Levis. Can he get the ball? And Drew Brees wasn't either. Peyton Manning, for that matter, wasn't.
No, Peyton Manning, his first decade had a plenty strong enough arm, though.
Right.
It wasn't always the prettiest ball, but his arm strength was never a question until after his neck surgery.
Right.
Now, the short answer is no. I don't think he has an NFL caliber arm. But what he does have is a quick release and the vision to see and throw the quarterback, the receivers open.
Yeah,
to have I keep comparing him to Tua because he's a right-handed version of him to me. Tua's arm isn't NFL standard. I don't think Young's is either.
Right.
But they see the game so well that they're able to put, and if Young can really hone in on putting the ball where he wants it, I think he can succeed for a while.
All right, D-Swane, we're coming to the end of our hour, and folks, D-Swane will be back. We've already talked about doing this on a more regular basis. D-Swane's going to step in and do a lot of the college football, NFL football, really focus a lot on college football and player development over the next little bit. We're going to get on here more often. We're going to talk more often. I think me and you've been ready to do that for a while. It's been making the time.
Exactly. I do want to say one thing for
ahead.
all the Georgia fans that love me so.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody that has watched Stetson Bennett over the last 3 years, and I'll compliment him before I beat him up. The guy worked his butt off.
He did.
And I give him all the credit in the world. And that's all I have good to say about him.
And next level?
Look at the progression of the offense of Georgia from 20 to 21 to 22. 21, anybody could have been the quarterback. Georgia won the national title despite Stetson Bennett.
Right.
And nobody outside of Athens is going to disagree, or nobody with any sense outside of Athens is going to disagree with me on that. They changed. In 2020, they lost, 3 or 4 games, and he was incapable of leading his team back from being behind. He had a great quarter against Ohio State. Good for him. The DB fell down. I get it. But he did play really well in that fourth quarter.
He did.
But the offense was catered to getting the ball out of his hand quickly, getting it into the best tight end to ever play. And I love Kyle Pitts. And he's a freak, and he was great at Florida. Brock Bowers is better.
I agree. Period. As the old Falcon even agrees with that one.
Do what?
The old Falcons fan even agrees with you there.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but it's just the truth. And I get called hater and all this. No, I don't look through rose-colored glasses like the idiots in Athens do. But 2 years ago, Bennett was the 5 to 7 step drop quarterback. Inaccurate. Didn't throw the ball well downfield. Last year, he didn't have to throw the ball downfield. Just don't turn it over inside the 10, and Georgia's going to win because that defense wasn't getting scored on by anybody.
Nope.
This year, McConkey, Mitchell, the running backs, and Brock Bowers, 2-step drop, quick hitches. I have this argument with Keith Perry once a week. Go back and watch the Oregon game. It's a microcosm of their offense throughout the year, with the exception of the fourth quarter against Ohio State where he had to throw the ball downfield. He threw the ball over 10 yards one time against Oregon, and it was incomplete. He threw for nearly 400 yards, but he probably didn't throw the ball 50 yards in the air the whole day. It was get it in the playmakers' hands and let them make stuff happen. And that's what happened. He can't play in the NFL. There's 32 teams in the NFL. If any team drafts or signs him as a free agent, the other 31 teams are going to beg for him to start against them.
All right. So we know who the last quarterback in your ranking is then.
Correct. I'd go back to Central Florida and get what's his name? John Rice Plumlee before I get Bennett.
All right, I got one last question, and we'll call it a night. And it's been a great podcast. You are the Carolina Panthers, and you are sitting there with the number 1 pick. You need a quarterback desperately. Who are you taking?
I'm taking Stroud.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he's physically built for it better than Young with a similar skills. That's the only way I can say it.
Here's what I know. Georgia's defense was the best defense in the country this year. It wasn't as good as their defense last year. And it helps to have freaking Marvin Harrison Jr., who is going to be the first receiver off the board next year, barring injury. That dude's a stud. But C.J. Stroud dissected Georgia's defense.
Best any quarterback played against Georgia in 2 years.
Absolutely.
All right, D-Swane. We're going to try to get another one of these in before draft time in 3 weeks, aren't we?
Buddy, I'm ready whenever you are.
All right, man. I got another podcast starting in a few minutes. I could talk to you all night, though, man. It's good to talk to you again.
Good talking to you, buddy. I look forward to the next time.
All right, brother. For D-Swane, for old QB1, we'll be back in a week or two. And we appreciate you tuning in tonight. Thanks.
Take care.
Take care.